on Friday morning on the 2nd that there was 2 children lost up here in Lansdowne, and we just deployed the team and got here as fast as we could.
I know exactly what happened to the kids. The kids are alive. The kids are probably not in Nova Scotia now.
They're small, they'd be hiding. They would have crawled underneath something probably when they got tired. They could have gone further than what we searched.
I have children, I have grandchildren, and I see what kids are like through the woods. There's no reason for any child to wander deep into the woods. There's just not. I think somebody hurt these kids. I think somebody hurt them.
May 2, 2025. That's the day 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and her little brother, 4-year-old Jack Sullivan, were officially declared missing from their home in Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia. Too many strange things about this case. Way too many. Some folks say their mama hid them. Or gave 'em to someone else. Someone she ain't even sure of. But there's other folks, they say something else entirely. Say the kids are still out there. Somewhere in the woods. Lost. Alone. Problem is, the cops. The search teams, they ain't acting like they care. Half-hearted searches, quick to pack up and go home. Still, one thing's for damn sure, those kids, Lily and Jack, they're in danger. And now, there's only one question left to ask. Where the hell are they? Malaya hides her kids. The hypothesis that Malaya Brooks Murray orchestrated the disappearance of Lily and Jack Sullivan originates primarily from a source known as Durwood, later revealed to be Darren, who is described as Malaya's second cousin. Darren shared his claims during a chat in a livestream, where he encouraged other family members, such as Janie McCann, Daniel Martel's mother, to speak to the media to shed light on the case. His actions suggest an intent to stir public attention and push for transparency. According to Darren, Malaya arranged for someone to pick up Lily and Jack in the early morning of May, 2025, before their disappearance was reported, implying a deliberate plan to remove the children from the household. Darren's narrative heavily relies on Janie McCann's account, who known as Daniel's mother. That adds significant detail to the hypothesis. Janie, living in an RV on the same property as the family, allegedly witnessed Malaya acting suspiciously on the driveway shortly after Lily and Jack were supposedly taken away in a car on the morning of May 2, 2025. Darren claims Janie confronted Malaya, asking, "What did you do?" A question that suggests Malaya was caught in a compromising moment linked to the children's disappearance. Janie reportedly maintains a detailed timeline of events on her phone, starting with a call from her brother Ron at 6:00 a.m. She returned his call around 6:10 or 6:15 a.m., then dozed off, but was later heard by her dog barking as Malaya, Lily, and Jack exited the house through the back sliding glass door. Janie then saw Malaya on the driveway, behaving in a way she described as strange, which further fueled suspicions about Malaya's involvement. The timeline provided by Janie, as relayed by Darren, remains vague on critical details, particularly the exact time the children were allegedly taken. A police dispatch audio references 8:00 a.m. as the last time the children were seen, though some statements mention 8:45 a.m., adding to the ambiguity. Janie's account includes a sworn statement to the RCMP about seeing Malaya on the driveway. But she has not publicly spoken to the media, though Darren notes she is considering an interview with CBC if supported. According to Darren, Malaya planned for Lily and Jack to be taken away, possibly to a safe location like the Sipnekatik First Nation, Reserve, or New Brunswick, as part of her desire to leave Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather. Following the children's disappearance, Malaya left the property on May 3, 2025, with her mother, Cindy Murray, and her youngest child, Meadow, which Darren suggests was an effort to cover up her actions. Darren further asserts that Malaya cannot disclose the truth due to being in a difficult situation, possibly due to pressure from family, the RCMP, or other factors. He frames her actions as legally permissible since Lily and Jack are not Daniel's biological children. suggesting she had the right to take them without his consent. However, the lack of clarity in the timeline and Malaya's subsequent silence, ceasing communication with the media after a brief interview on May 3, 2025, and blocking Daniel on social media, raise questions about her motives. Darren's hypothesis, while compelling, lacks direct corroboration from Malaya or the RCMP, and its reliance on Janie's unverified account makes it speculative, though it remains a central theory in explaining the children's fate. For further details, Darren has provided additional details to support his hypothesis. According to Darren, Malaya, as the biological mother and legal guardian of the children, retains full legal custody and has not been charged with any crimes related to their disappearance. This legal standing means she could, in theory, take Lilly and Jack anywhere without violating the law, provided no restraining orders or custody restrictions are in place. Darren's assertion suggests that Malaya's actions, if she indeed relocated the children, would not necessarily be unlawful, framing her decision as a legitimate exercise of her parental rights rather than a criminal act. Darren further contends that Lilly and Jack may never have been truly missing. In this scenario, Darren emphasizes that the children are not being hidden in a nefarious sense, but are instead being cared for and protected by Malaya's family. This claim aligns with his broader narrative that Malaya orchestrated their removal from the home she shared with Daniel Martel, possibly to shield them from an unsafe environment. Darren's hypothesis paints the situation as a deliberate but protective act, suggesting the children are safe with relatives rather than lost or abducted. Additionally, Darren has suggested that Malaya's silence since the children's disappearance is due to legal advice. He claims her lawyer has instructed her to refrain from speaking publicly to avoid potential legal repercussions. Specifically, Darren notes that if Malaya were to admit that Lilly and Jack were not missing, but were instead relocated by her, she could face serious charges. These include filing a false missing persons report, misusing public resources, such as helicopters and search dogs, deployed during the extensive search efforts, and providing misleading information to investigators, or causing a false alarm. This explanation accounts for Malaya's limited engagement with the media and her absence from public search efforts, framing her silence as a strategic move to protect herself legally, while the children remain safe with her family. For the causes, a primary motive for Malaya Brooks Murray potentially hiding her children, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, could stem from her concerns about the toxic environment created by Daniel Martel's alleged drug use. On May 3, 2025, a heated altercation took place in the driveway of their Lansdowne Station home, involving Malaya's family members, including her half-sister Haley, Haley's sister-in-law Cheryl, Haley's brother's partner Shelby, Malaya's mother, and Daniel's cousin Logan. The confrontation was triggered by suspicions about Daniel's behavior, specifically after Haley and others heard rustling sounds coming from the bathroom, where Daniel was located just before a police briefing. Haley asserted that these sounds were evidence of Daniel using methamphetamine, a claim that fueled the family dispute. She described Daniel as running around like a madman or a headless chicken, contrasting this with the calmer demeanor of Malaya's family, suggesting his erratic behavior was influenced by drug use. This incident, as recounted by Haley, likely heightened Malaya's fears about the safety of her children in a household where such behavior was occurring, providing a strong incentive to remove Lilly and Jack from the environment to protect them from potential harm. This revelation raised serious concerns about why Lilly, Jack, and their younger sibling Meadow were allowed to live in a home with someone struggling with substance abuse. The family's prior knowledge of Daniel's alleged drug problem, combined with their decision to investigate the bathroom after hearing suspicious noises, indicates a deep-seated distrust of Daniel. For Malaya, learning or confirming that Daniel had been using drugs for an extended period could have solidified her determination to shield her children from an unstable and potentially dangerous home environment. If Malaya believed that Daniel's drug use posed a direct threat to her children's well-being. This could have motivated her to arrange for Lilly and Jack to be taken to a safer location, such as with her extended family, as suggested by Darren's hypothesis. The involvement of CPS further supports the motive that Malaya may have hidden her children to protect them from an unsafe situation. Haley and Michelle, the livestream host, speculated that the accusations of Daniel's drug use could explain why CPS required Malaya to be supervised when with Meadow, and why Daniel was initially barred from seeing his daughter. CPS had previously investigated the living conditions of Lilly and Jack before their disappearance, suggesting pre-existing concerns about the household. If Malaya was aware that CPS was scrutinizing her family, possibly due to Daniel's alleged drug use or other environmental factors, she might have feared losing custody of Lilly and Jack. This fear could have driven her to take drastic measures, such as relocating the children to a place like a native reserve with her family, as Darren claimed, to prevent CPS from intervening and potentially removing her children from her care. The requirement for supervised visitation with Meadow indicates that CPS viewed the home as problematic, which could have pushed Malaya to act preemptively to ensure her children's safety. Additionally, the family dynamics and Malaya's strained relationship with Daniel's family could have contributed to her motive for hiding Lilly and Jack. The May 3 altercation highlighted tensions between Malaya's family and Daniel's, with Haley openly confronting Daniel's relatives about his drug use. The fact that Malaya left the property with her mother and Meadow shortly after this dispute, cutting off communication with Daniel, suggests a desire to escape not only Daniel but also his family's influence. Michelle noted that Malaya's mother, Cindy Murray, was involved in the decision to take Meadow away, and the family's distrust of Daniel was compounded by suspicions about his mother, Janie, who refused police searches of her RV, citing concerns about her dog or a cupboard. If Malaya felt that Daniel's family, potentially complicit in or aware of his drug issues, posed a risk to her children's stability, she might have chosen to hide Lilly and Jack to distance them from this environment. The combination of Daniel's alleged drug use, CPS scrutiny, and familial conflict likely created a compelling motive for Malaya to take extreme measures to protect her children by removing them from the household. Another motive can be seen from the birthplace of Malaya Brooks Murray. She's a member of the Sapeknkatik First Nation, may have been driven to hide her children, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, due to a deep-seated fear of losing them to the child welfare system, a concern rooted in the historical trauma of the Sixties Scoop. The Sixties Scoop, spanning from the late 1950s to the 1980s, saw approximately 20 Zalozan Indigenous children in Canada forcibly removed from their families by provincial child welfare agencies, often placed in non-Indigenous foster or adoptive homes. This policy, driven by assimilationist goals and Eurocentric standards, frequently targeted Indigenous families for reasons like poverty or cultural misunderstandings, labeling them as neglectful. For Malaya, this historical context likely amplified her distrust of CPS, especially given their prior investigation into the living conditions of Lilly and Jack months before their disappearance on May 2, 2025. The Globe and Mail reported that CPS had been alerted by a school worker about developmental concerns for the children, raising the possibility that Malaya feared her children could be taken away, echoing the 60s Scoop's legacy of separating Indigenous children from their families and cultural heritage. As mentioned, the CPS investigation into Malaya's household posed a direct threat to her custody of Lilly and Jack, particularly since she held sole legal custody following her separation from their father, Cody Sullivan. The 60s Scoop left a lasting impact on Indigenous communities, fostering a profound mistrust of state agencies, like CPS, which are often perceived as perpetuating colonial practices. Data indicates that Indigenous children in Canada are 17 times more likely to be removed from their families than non-Indigenous children, with 59% of CPS investigations involving First Nations children being substantiated compared to 46% for non-Indigenous Indigenous children. Malaya's fear that Lilly and Jack could be placed in foster care, potentially losing their connection to the Sepeknenkatik First Nations language, traditions, and community, may have driven her to take drastic measures. The decision by Malaya Brooks Murray to potentially hide Lilly and Jack Sullivan, as suggested by her second cousin Darren, may have been driven by deep-seated psychological pressures stemming from her past relationship with Cody Sullivan, the children's biological father, and her mental state following the birth of her youngest child, Meadow. Malaya and Cody had a 3-year relationship that Belinda Gray, the children's grandmother, initially described as a perfect family. However, Malaya later confided to Gray that she was deeply unhappy, citing significant issues that ultimately led to their separation. The breakup was particularly tumultuous, reportedly occurring around the time of Jack's birth, a period marked by Cody's heavy drinking and drug use, as confirmed by Gray and reiterated by both Daniel Martel and Darren. This volatile environment likely caused Malaya considerable emotional distress, potentially leading to PTSD. The need to secure sole custody of Lilly and Jack through a court battle further compounded her stress, as Cody's decision to completely withdraw from their lives left Malaya to raise the children alone. Darren, in his livestream statements, emphasized these struggles, suggesting that the trauma from Cody's substance abuse and the relationship's collapse could have left Malaya in a fragile mental state, influencing her to make impulsive decisions, such as arranging for Lilly and Jack to be taken away on the morning of May 2, 2025, possibly to a safe location like the Sepeknenkatik First Nation Reserve or New Brunswick. Adding to her psychological burden was the birth of Meadow, her daughter with Daniel Martel, who was approximately 16 months old at the time of the disappearance in May 2025, placing her birth around early 2024. As a stay-at-home mother in a remote rural area of Lansdowne Station, Malaya was responsible for caring for 3 young children, Lilly, Jack, and Meadow, in a challenging environment surrounded by dense forest and rugged terrain. This demanding role, combined with the prior investigation by CPS into the living conditions of Lilly and Jack, likely intensified her stress. Social media discussions speculated that Malaya may have been in a fragile mental state due to postpartum depression, a condition that can affect new mothers, especially under such pressures. While no formal diagnosis of postpartum depression is documented in the sources, the combination of caring for a toddler, managing 2 older children, and facing scrutiny from CPS could have pushed Malaya toward emotional instability. Darren's hypothesis supports this, as he claimed Malaya was in a tough spot and unable to disclose the truth about arranging for the children's removal, possibly due to fear of judgment or further intervention from authorities. These psychological challenges, potential PTSD from her troubled relationship with Cody, and the strain of possible postpartum depression, likely converged with other anxieties to impair Malaya's decision-making. Additionally, tensions with Daniel Martel, her partner at the time, and the severed connection with Cody's family, particularly Belinda Gray, who had once been close to the children, added to her sense of isolation. Darren's account, based on Janie McCann's observations of Malaya acting strangely on the driveway after the children were allegedly taken away, suggests that Malaya's decision to hide Lilly and Jack was a desperate act to protect them from perceived threats, including CPS and familial conflicts. Her abrupt departure from Lansdowne Station on May 3, 2025, with her mother Cindy Murray and Meadow, along with her subsequent silence and blocking of Daniel on social media, further indicate a panicked response, driven by these cumulative pressures. The lack of clear communication from Malaya, as noted by Darren, who claimed she couldn't reveal the truth due to her precarious situation, underscores how her psychological state may have led to rash actions. The combination of potential PTSD from a traumatic relationship with Cody, the stress of possible postpartum depression after Meadow's birth, and fears of losing her children to CPS or familial interference likely overwhelmed Malaya, prompting her to orchestrate the children's disappearance, as Darren suggested. to ensure their safety in an Indigenous community away from external scrutiny. While these motives remain speculative, without direct confirmation of her mental health diagnosis, the context of her actions, leaving the area, cutting off contact, and remaining silent, aligns with a mother acting under immense psychological strain, driven to protect her children at all costs. The disappearance of Lilly and Jack Sullivan has led to speculation about several possible locations where they might have been taken, with two Indigenous reserves emerging as significant points of interest in the narrative. One such location is the Millbrook Reserve in Nova Scotia, Canada. Darren Geddes suggested this reserve as a potential early stop where the children could have been hidden after their disappearance on May 2, 2025. According to Darren, the RCMP conducted a secretive pre-dawn raid at approximately 4:24 a.m., possibly to search for the children or individuals connected to the case. The timing of the operation was described as intentional, aimed at catching people off guard while they were sleeping. The Millbrook Reserve's proximity to the Sullivan family home and its limited public scrutiny make it an ideal place for concealing the children, as Darren argued, due to jurisdictional constraints that require RCMP to obtain judicial authorization or tribal cooperation to conduct searches. However, no public records confirm that the RCMP formally investigated the Millbrook Reserve in connection with this case, and despite Darren's claims of providing documentation and statements to the authorities, there is no evidence that these leads were pursued or that any warrants were issued. Another location tied to the children's potential whereabouts is the St. Regis Mohawk Reservation, which spans the border between Ontario, Quebec, and New York State, near Plattsburgh, New York, approximately 90 minutes away. Darren described this reserve as a strategic choice for moving the children to evade detection, citing its reputation for loosely monitored border crossings. He claimed it was ironclad that Lilly and Jack were transported through this reservation, a theory bolstered by a Plattsburgh hairdresser's account of seeing the children in her salon on May 26, 2025, nearly a month after the reported disappearance. This sighting, if true, suggests the children could have been moved across the U.S.-Canada border via the reservation, taking advantage of the complex legal barriers that hinder RCMP investigations in such areas, which require cooperation from U.S. agencies and intricate legal processes. Yet, the absence of concrete evidence, such as CCTV footage, photographs, or third-party verification, undermines the credibility of this claim. Darren's assertion relies solely on his own verification process, lacking specific details like the hairdresser's name or supporting documentation. Both the Millbrook Reserve and the St. Regis Mohawk Reservation are discussed within the broader hypothesis that Malaya may have intentionally moved Lilly and Jack to Indigenous territories to shield them from oversight by CPS and the RCMP. These reserves are perceived as jurisdictional gray areas, where Canadian authorities face significant limitations without specific warrants or tribal governance approval, making them potential havens for hiding the children. Despite the compelling nature of these theories, no definitive evidence links either reserve directly to the children's current whereabouts, leaving these locations as speculative but significant points in the ongoing mystery of Lilly and Jack Sullivan's disappearance. Despite plenty of evidence backing the theory that Malaya handed her kids over to someone else. But the biggest question still lingers: that why didn't she just leave with them quietly instead of reporting them missing and turning the whole town upside down? Malaya Brooks Murray's decision not to flee with her children, Lilly and Jack Sullivan, despite allegedly arranging for them to be taken to a safe location, may have been a strategic move to divert attention from her actions and buy time for whoever took the children. By reporting the children as missing and remaining in Lansdowne Station initially, Malaya could have aimed to mislead the RCMP and CPS, creating the appearance of a genuine missing persons case. This delay might have allowed the person or family members, such as the Brookses, to relocate Lilly and Jack far enough to avoid immediate detection. Her limited engagement with the media, including a single interview with CTV News on May 3, and her subsequent departure with her mother, Cindy Murray, and daughter Meadow suggest she was maintaining a facade to protect the children's new location while avoiding suspicion that she had planned their disappearance. Another explanation for Malaya's choice to stay behind involves the urgent need to address immediate familial and legal pressures that could have unraveled her plan if she had fled with all three children. The heated altercation on May 3, 2025, in the driveway of her Lansdowne station home highlighted significant tensions. During this confrontation, Malaya's family accused Daniel of drug use, escalating distrust and conflict. Malaya's decision to remain may reflect her need to manage these accusations and deflect blame from herself, as Daniel's family, including his mother Janie, suspected her involvement in the children's disappearance. Additionally, CPS's prior investigation into Lilly and Jack's living conditions and their requirement that Malaya be supervised with Meadow posed a direct threat to her custody. Leaving with all three children could have prompted CPS to intervene more aggressively or led Daniel's family to alert authorities, complicating her efforts to secure a safe haven for Lilly and Jack. By staying and reporting the children missing, Malaya may have sought to maintain control over the situation while ensuring her children were safely hidden. Malaya's psychological state could also explain her decision to report the children as missing rather than fleeing with them, potentially wreaking panic or indecision that led to unintended consequences. If Malaya initially arranged for Lilly and Jack to be taken to a safe location, such as a reserve, to protect them from CPS or Daniel's influence, she may have later panicked due to personal mental health struggles or the overwhelming pressure of the situation. Reporting the children as missing without fully considering the ramifications, such as the massive search efforts involving helicopters and police dogs, could have been an impulsive decision driven by fear or uncertainty. Darren noted that Malaya's lawyer later advised her to remain silent, warning that admitting the children were not missing could lead to serious legal repercussions, including charges of filing a false report, wasting public resources, or obstructing the RCMP's investigation. This legal counsel, received after the fact, may have trapped Malaya in a narrative she could not easily retract, forcing her to maintain the missing person's story while staying behind to avoid further incriminating herself. Finally, Malaya's choice to frame the situation as a missing persons case rather than an outright escape with her children may have been influenced by her desire to avoid drawing excessive scrutiny. To her Sepik-Niikitik First Nation community, the historical trauma of the 60s Scoop has left a deep mistrust of state agencies like CPS and the RCMP among Indigenous communities. By fleeing with Lilly and Jack, Malaya risked attracting heightened attention to her community, potentially inviting further CPS or RCMP investigations into the reserve where she allegedly sent her children. Such scrutiny could have sparked conflict within her community, especially if other families feared similar interventions. By reporting the children missing and staying behind, Malaya may have aimed to shield her community from unwanted attention while ensuring Lilly and Jack were protected in a culturally safe environment. Her departure with Meadow on May 3 and subsequent silence suggest a delicate balancing act to safeguard her children, manage legal risks, and minimize disruption to her Indigenous community, all while navigating the complex fallout of her decision. Lately, some rumors, allegedly coming from Daniel himself, have started to shake the theory that Malaya hid the kids on purpose. In a public group where people discussed the disappearance of Lilly and Jack, a comment, said to be from Daniel, claimed that Malaya actually handed the kids over to someone. According to this post, she loaded Lilly and Jack into a car, driven by an unknown person, and they were taken to some undisclosed place. The strange part, Daniel's post suggested that Malaya herself might not even know where that place was. Supposedly, the police have been working to track down the location. Some people in that discussion went even further, saying it's possible Malaya didn't even know who that person was, like she just gave the kids to a complete stranger. That's where things get really bizarre. Because up until now, not a single person involved in this case, whether it's Darren, Daniel, or Janie, has ever mentioned anything about such a person. No names, no vague hints, not even a rumor about someone else being there that morning. This mystery person, if they exist at all, is like a ghost in this story, completely invisible to everyone until now. Still, it's important to say this clearly, these are just rumors. Nothing in this story has been confirmed by anyone directly connected to the case. No police statements, no media confirmation, nothing from anyone involved. And what makes this whole thing even more questionable is the fact that Daniel himself has never publicly mentioned this in any of his countless interviews with the media. Not once. If he really believed Malaya gave the kids to someone else, why didn't he ever say it before? Why only some random comment in a public group, of all places? It makes you wonder if these claims were real at all, or if they're just another layer of noise in a case already drowning in lies, half-truths, and dead ends. On the contrary, assuming that Malaya had hidden the two children, many people, even those who worked directly on this project, including the police and members of the search team, believe that the children are still in the forest. Why do they still hold such a strong belief? Lost in the Woods hypothesis. The children, just 6 and 4 years old, were reportedly last seen leaving their home through the back door around 10 a.m., according to their stepfather, Daniel Martel, and mother, Malaya Brooks Murray. Soon after, a single, eerie clue emerged: a small rubber boot print, discovered on a forest trail near a water pipeline, deep in the dense woods surrounding their home. The RCMP immediately acted. They collected the boot print, made a cast, and analyzed it carefully. As detailed by the search team leader in an interview transcript, we sent an RCMP K9 in first. Then we sent human tracking teams. Then the RCMP forensics unit went in and did actually a cast of the boot print. This was their only physical lead. The terrain itself seemed to support the "lost in the woods" theory. The forest was dense, treacherous, littered with fallen trees from Hurricane Fiona, and scattered with abandoned wells and mine shafts. In some areas, the searchers admitted they couldn't even see each other, even when standing just a meter apart. There would be places where teams would almost be able to touch their fingertips together, and they couldn't actually see each other through the bushes. The search was massive. More than 160 people, KD9 units, drones, helicopters. Over 12,000 hours were spent combing through the woods and surrounding areas. And yet, there was nothing. No clothing, no toys, no campsite, not even a scent trail for the highly trained dogs to follow. We did not find any scent specific to the children, unfortunately. Even more striking, the search team specifically warned the public to enter the area to avoid contaminating the scene and risking the loss of critical scent trails. We don't want the general public in the area because we use a lot of specialized assets like canines that are looking for the freshest human scent. In the end, the professionals were blunt. What has been searched very well. Every key area had been thoroughly searched, leaving nothing but haunting silence. Which leads to the most chilling question of all: if the children were truly lost in the woods, where did they go? And if they were never in the woods to begin with, what really happened to Lilly and Jack Sullivan? Nestled deep within the rural landscape of Nova Scotia, the Sullivan home sat in near total isolation, cut off from neighbors, hidden by layers of wilderness, surrounded on all sides by thick, untamed nature. It wasn't just remote, it was secluded in every sense. Towering trees pressed in from every direction, forming a near impenetrable wall of greenery. Twisting, narrow trails crisscrossed through the woods, some created by wildlife, others barely visible to the untrained eye. The land itself was unforgiving, an uneven mix of rocky hills, sudden dips, and dense underbrush, with thickets so tightly packed that even seasoned searchers described the area as suffocating. Underfoot, the ground was soft in places, littered with fallen leaves and moss, capable of swallowing footprints in seconds. Nearby, Lansdowne Lake stretched out like a silent trap, dark, still, and deceptively calm, its surface betraying none of the dangers lurking below. This wasn't the kind of place where help was just around the corner. There were no passing cars, no nearby houses to knock on for help, no bustling streets where strangers might stumble upon two wandering children. It was a world cut off from the outside, where isolation wasn't just a condition, it was the rule. Recognizing this, the RCMP acted swiftly and decisively. From the moment the children were reported missing, their initial hypothesis seemed painfully obvious. Lily and Jack had likely wandered off, their natural curiosity pulling them beyond the safety of their home and into the overwhelming wilderness that surrounded them. Given their young ages and the disorienting nature of the terrain, the police believed the siblings couldn't have gone far, but even a short distance in this environment could spell disaster. Search perimeter covering 5.5 square kilometers, a radius calculated based on typical behavior patterns for missing children in similar cases. The strategy was clear: flood the most likely zones before time ran out. Searchers fanned out across the rugged landscape, moving carefully but urgently, their movements guided by GPS coordinates, detailed maps, and grid-based search protocols designed to leave no area unexplored. Every step was deliberate. Every clearing was examined. Every shadow was approached with caution. But as search teams pushed deeper into the woods and along the shores of the lake, the eerie silence remained. No voices. No cries for help. No broken branches. No small footprints in the dirt, nothing. It was as though the land had swallowed the children whole, erasing all traces of their present days past. The perimeter expanded. But the result was the same emptiness. Soon, a troubling question began to linger among the searchers and investigators alike, unspoken at first, but impossible to ignore. Had Lily and Javer entered those woods at all? From the earliest moments of the investigation, the spotlight inevitably turned to the two adults inside the home that morning: Daniel Martel, the children's stepfather, and their mother, Malaya Brooks Murray. Both parents told investigators the same thing around 10:00 a.m. on May 2, 2025. They realized Lily and Jack were no longer inside the house. According to their account, the two children had simply walked out the back quietly, unnoticed, vanishing in a matter of minutes. There were no screams, no obvious signs of mischief or distress. Just silence. They described it as a brief, unremarkable moment, one that could happen to any parent distracted by the chaos of daily life. To investigators, the story presented an obvious possibility: the children, driven by innocent curiosity, might have wandered off into the thick woods nearby. It was a theory supported by the geography: an isolated home surrounded by untamed wilderness, with no clear physical barriers between the backyard and the sprawling forest beyond. But even as their statements seemed to fit the environment, subtle questions began to surface. Ones that investigators could not easily ignore. Why hadn't either adult noticed the door opening, especially in such a remote location where vigilance was critical? How had both parents failed to detect the movement of two young children leaving the safety of the house, children who were known to stay close, children and rarely ventured beyond the yard? And why, on that particular morning, had the children apparently broken from their typical behavior? These weren't just procedural questions, they were the quiet doubts that began to grow within the investigation itself. The explanation offered by Daniel and Malaya was simple, almost too simple. It suggested a brief lapse in supervision, a tragic but accidental moment. Yet, the more investigators examined their account, the more it seemed to leave room for uncomfortable possibilities. Because in missing child cases, investigators know that sometimes simplicity can be misleading, and that not every story of a door left ajar is as innocent as it sounds. Another crucial layer to the case emerged from within the family itself, centered around the unique behavioral challenges of Lily and Jack. According to their stepfather, Daniel Martel, both children had shown signs of developmental delays, particularly those associated with autism spectrum disorder, though neither had received an official medical diagnosis. These subtle, often misunderstood characteristics added a deeper complexity to the investigation. Daniel described both Lilly and Jack as sensitive, easily overwhelmed, and prone to moments of fixation traits that could profoundly affect their decision-making and reactions in unfamiliar settings. In a home environment, their routines were predictable, their comfort zones well established. But in the chaotic, unpredictable expanse of the woods, those same traits could quickly turn dangerous. Children on the spectrum are known to struggle with changes in environment, and their instinct when faced with overwhelming sensory input, loud sounds, shifting light, strange textures, can sometimes be to hide or retreat, rather than seek help or attempt to return to safety. This behavioral tendency raised a disturbing possibility that Lilly and Jack, upon finding themselves lost in the dense forest, may not have attempted to retrace their steps or call out for help. Instead, they may have withdrawn deeper into hiding, perhaps crawling beneath logs, huddling under brush, or remaining perfectly still, making them invisible to searchers. To experienced investigators and search experts, this detail added a haunting dimension to the search. It wasn't just a matter of finding two missing children, it was about locating two young individuals who might instinctively avoid being found. This possibility reshaped every aspect of the search effort, requiring crews to look not just for signs of movement, but for stillness, quiet, hidden places where a frightened child might silently remain out of sight, even as rescue teams passed just meters away. The thought was devastating, yet chillingly plausible, that the very traits making Lilly and Jack more vulnerable also made them far harder to find in the depths of the wilderness. The search effort for Lilly and Jack Sullivan was unlike anything the quiet, rural community of Lansdowne Station had ever witnessed. What began as a local missing child report quickly transformed into a full-blown emergency operation, massive in scope, relentless in pace, and executed with military-like precision. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police wasted no time in mobilizing their resources, quickly assembling a task force of more than 160 personnel. But this wasn't limited to boots on the ground. It became a multi-layered mission involving an arsenal of advanced technologies and specialized teams, all zeroed in on a singular goal: finding the missing siblings. The search teams were deployed systematically across the dense woods and the treacherous terrain surrounding Lansdowne Lake, the very heart of the investigation's focus. From the outset, law enforcement officials were convinced that this vast natural expanse and area, where rugged forests bled into the still, dark waters of the lake, was the most likely place where the children could have disappeared. The reasoning was clear. Given the proximity of the house to the woods, and the absence of immediate sightings beyond the property, authorities believed the siblings had likely wandered into the nearby wilderness on foot, lost and disoriented in an environment where even seasoned adults could struggle to navigate. Search teams pressed into the woods under brutal conditions, navigating dense underbrush, slippery slopes, and thickets where visibility dropped to mere feet. They used flagging tape to mark every path, ensuring no area was searched twice or, worse, missed altogether. Helicopters swept overhead, circling in tight orbits, their infrared cameras scanning for heat signatures below the forest canopy. Drones flew in coordinated patterns, mapping out sections that were too dangerous for people to enter on foot. The Canadian units, carefully trained for wilderness tracking, were brought in to detect even the faintest trace of scent, while human trackers meticulously studied the ground for subtle disturbances, footprints, overturned leaves, broken twigs, any sign that might suggest where the children had been. The sheer intensity of the search was staggering. Day after day, new teams rotated in, covering the same grids from different angles, ensuring nothing was overlooked. Many of the volunteers, particularly those from the local Indigenous community, brought generations of knowledge, about the land searching instinctively for signs that might escape less experienced eyes. They knew the shortcuts wildlife used, the natural hiding spots where a frightened child might take shelter, and the hidden paths that could easily lure someone deeper into the wilderness without realizing it. Yet, despite all their efforts, despite the scale, the strategy, and the technology, there was nothing. No sightings. No belongings. No tracks leading in or out of the area. The deeper the search pushed, the more unsettling the silence became. For those on the front lines, the experience wasn't just frustrating, it was surreal. It defied logic, even for the most seasoned searchers. How could two children simply vanish in a place where no corner was left unsearched? The longer it continued, the more disturbing it became that every ounce of manpower had been concentrated in the wrong place from the very beginning, chasing a scenario that, perhaps, had never happened at all. Weather conditions on May 2, 2025, cast an ominous shadow over the entire search effort from the very beginning. Lansdowne Station, Nova Scotia, was gripped by the kind of spring weather that locals understood all too well: cold, damp, and unpredictable. The air was thick with moisture, as a steady chill drifted through the trees and settled over the landscape like a heavy blanket. Temperatures remained low throughout the day, lingering between 5 and 15 degrees Celsius. But it wasn't just the cold that posed a threat, it was the suffocating dampness that seeped into everything. The forest floor was already slick from earlier rainfall, coated in wet leaves and mud, creating treacherous conditions for even the most experienced hikers, let alone two small children. Fog and light drizzle reduced visibility, cloaking the woods in a muted haze that blurred familiar landmarks and muffled distant sounds. In that kind of environment, even the sharpest eyes could miss something hidden just a few feet away. Search teams knew what they were up against. These were the conditions that didn't just make navigation difficult, they erased orientation altogether. In such weather, sound behaves differently. Voices don't travel far, and the comforting noise of home a parent calling. The barking of a dog can be swallowed by the damp air before it ever reaches lost ears. For children as young as Lilly and Jack, the danger only in getting physically lost, it was in becoming invisible to everyone around them. And then there was the looming threat of hypothermia. Always a danger in this kind of cold, but far more lethal for small bodies with little protection. The children hadn't left home prepared for exposure. Without warm clothing or waterproof layers, even a short time in these conditions could have been enough to sap their strength, dull their senses, and leave them too exhausted to continue moving or even cry out. For searchers trudging through the saturated undergrowth, every hour spent without finding them didn't just deepen the mystery, it sharpened a grim possibility. The woods surrounding the Sullivan home aren't just thick, they are suffocating. Dense layers of trees loom over narrow, uneven trails, where underbrush twists and tangles into walls of thorns and shadow. The ground itself is unpredictable, scattered with roots, rocks, and sudden drops, making every step a potential trap for small, unsteady feet. For two young children, Lily, just 6, and Jack, only 4, this landscape isn't simply dangerous. It's a maze designed to swallow them whole. And beyond the trees, another silent threat waits. Lansdowne Lake. Still, quiet, deceptively calm. To adults, it's a body of water. To children, it's a place that pulls curiosity like a magnet, shimmering, mysterious, and deadly. Search teams knew the risks. They brought in divers, trained to search cold, murky depths. They deployed drones, scanning every shoreline, every inlet, every possible hiding place near the water. But their efforts were met with nothing. No footprints on the muddy banks. No scraps of clothing caught in the reeds. No sign that anyone had been there at all. The lake remained untouched. The forest, unyielding. And with every passing hour, one terrifying possibility grew stronger: that Lilly and Jack Sullivan had vanished without leaving a single trace in a place where every inch had been searched. Lilly and Jack Sullivan were not the kind of children who wandered far. Their stepfather, Daniel Martel, described them as homebound, content with the comfort of their backyard, the only world they truly knew. Most days, they remained close to the house, their small feet never crossing the invisible line where the yard met the woods. But even within routine, there is unpredictability, especially in young minds. Daniel acknowledged that both children, though usually cautious, were curious by nature. Lily, just 6 years old, carried the innate boldness of an older sibling. Protective, adventurous, and eager to explore, she often led Jack by the hand on their little backyard adventures. And in a moment of distraction, a child's sense of adventure can override all boundaries. Perhaps it was something simple, a sound, a glimpse of movement, or a shimmering patch of sunlight through the trees. Perhaps Lily, in her innocent excitement, convinced Jack to follow her just a little farther into the woods. What began as a harmless game could have escalated in minutes. The forest near their home was not forgiving. Dense underbrush, twisted roots, and thick trees swallowed paths quickly, leaving no clear direction back. In such an environment, disorientation would set in fast, especially for two small children with no sense of direction. For many, this scenario remains a chilling possibility that the children's vanishing wasn't premeditated, nor criminal, but the tragic result of a single impulsive choice, driven by nothing more than youthful curiosity. As the hours stretched into days, and every visible inch of the woods had been combed by human searchers, the teams deployed one of their most trusted and precise resources: search and rescue dogs. These were not ordinary dogs. They were highly trained, capable of picking up the faintest traces of human scent, even after rain or time had passed. With leashes taut and noses pressed to the ground, they were led deep into the tangled wilderness surrounding the Sullivan home. It was a methodical, painstaking process. Every trail, every thicket, every hollow under a fallen tree was examined as handlers moved slowly, letting the dogs sweep the ground in silence, hoping for even the smallest sign of Lily or Jack. But as the search continued, an unsettling pattern emerged. The dogs found nothing. No alerts. No sudden change in behavior. No scent trails to follow. It wasn't just unusual, it was alarming. In missing person cases, especially involving young children, dogs are often the strongest asset, able to detect scent days later under difficult conditions. Even when the scent has weakened, most dogs will still show subtle signs: pausing, circling, pulling their handler toward a possible lead. But here, there was nothing. Some searchers pointed to the weather. It had been raining intermittently before and during the search efforts. Dampness and cold can make scent trails difficult to trace, possibly washing away vital clues before the dogs ever arrived. But even the weather taken into account, seasoned searchers couldn't ignore what the dog's silence seemed to suggest. No matter how dense the forest, no matter how much rain fell, it was still strange, too strange, that not a single whiff of the children's presence was detected. The possibility couldn't be ignored any longer. What if Lily and Jack had never been in the woods at all? This wasn't just a complication, it was a deep fracture in the entire investigation. The search, the resources, the urgency, it might have all been focused in the wrong place. And, as that realization began to settle over the exhausted search teams, a far more chilling question emerged. If not the woods, then where were they? In any missing child case, timing is everything. According to RCMP records, the 911 call reporting Lily and Jack Sullivan missing was placed at approximately 10:00 a.m. on May 2, 2025. Their stepfather, Daniel Martel, and their mother, Malaya Brooks Murray, told authorities they discovered the children were gone just moments earlier, explaining Lily and Jack had slipped out quietly through the back door without anyone noticing. It was a chilling detail. This wasn't a case where hours had passed before anyone realized something was wrong. The timeline between the children's disappearance and the call for help was short, uncomfortably short. That brief window immediately shaped every move that followed. To search crews, it suggested something simple, something tragically common. The children couldn't have gone far. With only minutes unaccounted for, it seemed almost certain that Lily and Jack were still somewhere nearby, likely wandering in the dense, overgrown woods that surrounded their isolated home on all sides. That belief became the driving force behind the early search efforts. The urgency was palpable. Within hours, search teams were swarming the area, deploying drones, search dogs, and dozens of trained personnel, combing every stretch of land within walking distance of the house. They believed they were racing against the clock, acting fast enough to find the children before exhaustion, fear, or the elements could overtake them. The logic seemed undeniable. Two young children, just 6 and 4 years old, wouldn't have had time to travel far on foot, especially not through rugged terrain filled with thick underbrush, fallen trees, and steep, uneven ground. The focus remained tight, local, close to home. For those first crucial hours, hope still burned bright. But as the minutes dragged into hours, and the hours became days, that early confidence began to crack. Despite thousands of man-hours, no sign of Lily or Jack emerged from the woods. No footprints. No clothing. No scattered toys. Nothing. Suddenly, that short window of time, the very detail that had given searchers hope, became something far more ominous. Because if they had vanished within minutes and left no trace, the question wasn't just where they went. It became something far more chilling: how. Throughout the relentless search for Lilly and Jack Sullivan, one detail stood out as both baffling and deeply unsettling: the complete absence of their personal belongings. Despite extensive efforts involving search dogs, drones, and ground teams meticulously sweeping through miles of dense forest and the nearby lake, not a single object linked to the children was recovered. No discarded shoes. No pieces of torn clothing. No beloved stuffed animals they were said to cherish. Nothing. In most missing child cases, traces are almost inevitable. Young children tend to drop or abandon items, especially when frightened or exhausted. A shoe slipping off while stumbling through rough terrain, a jacket snagging on low-hanging branches, or a toy falling unnoticed are all common in wilderness disappearances. But in this case, there were none of these telltale signs. This absence led investigators to wrestle with two unsettling possibilities, both pointing toward vastly different conclusions. One theory suggested that the children may never have been in the forest at all. If true, it would mean that the entire search operation was focused on the wrong location, potentially wasting critical hours on an area that held no answers. This scenario raised disturbing questions about whether the children had been moved elsewhere, far beyond the reach of search teams, before the first emergency call was ever placed. The other possibility was equally grim, yet rooted in harsh environmental reality. The forest surrounding the Sullivan home wasn't just thick, it was punishing. Heavy undergrowth, concealed hollows, and storm-damaged debris created countless places where small objects, or even small bodies, could vanish from sight. In this scenario, it wasn't human deception at play, but nature itself hiding every clue beneath layers of leaves, soil, and fallen timber. In both cases, the complete lack of physical evidence painted a chilling portrait of the case's complexity. Either these children were never where everyone believed they were, or they were, and the forest itself had swallowed every trace of them, leaving only silence behind. From the earliest hours of the search, it became clear that this wasn't just another missing persons case, it was a test of expertise, of endurance, and of local knowledge. The teams deployed to search for Lilly and Jack Sullivan were far from inexperienced. They included veteran officers from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, many of whom had dedicated their careers to search and rescue operations in some of the most remote and unforgiving landscapes in Canada. Alongside them were volunteers from the nearby Sipekne'katik First Nation, people who knew the land not from maps or GPS, but from lived experience. These were locals who had hunted in these woods, fished in its streams, and walked its hidden paths for generations. They understood its every nuance, the way the terrain shifted after a storm, where animals forged trails invisible to outsiders, and which dense thickets concealed unexpected openings. Together, these teams approached the search with tactical precision. employing advanced grid search methods designed to leave no corner unexplored. Using colored flagging tape, GPS coordinates, and detailed malumleets divided the vast wilderness into manageable sections and moved through the forest in tight, coordinated lines. Their movements were slow, deliberate, their eyes trained to pick up even the slightest irregularities: a snapped branch, a faint depression in the soil, the smallest glimmer of fabric among the leaves. Every step was marked, every area logged, every searcher hyper-focused on finding even the faintest sign of the missing children. But as hours turned into days, a disturbing pattern emerged. No clues surfaced, no footprints, no fragments of clothing, no personal items that would normally appear in such cases. Not even subtle indicators: disturbed foliage, child-sized crawl spaces, or the familiar trails often left by young wanderers were present. This wasn't simply a difficult search, it was something altogether different, something that began to gnaw at the searchers themselves. For many of the locals involved, it became harder and harder to believe that two small children could have disappeared into the woods without leaving so much as a trace. The complete absence of evidence defied their collective experience. They had seen countless search operations before, and even in cases where children had traveled surprisingly far, there was always something: a shoe, a toy, a footprint, a sign of panic or struggle. But here, there was only silence. As the search wore on, another question began to weigh heavily on those involved: an unspoken fear that lingered just beneath the surface. Had they been searching in the wrong place from the very beginning? Had Lilly and Jack been removed from the area before anyone even knew they were missing? Among seasoned rescuers and locals alike, there was growing discomfort, not just at the failure to find answers, but at the chilling possibility that the truth of this case lay far beyond the woods, hidden somewhere no grid search could ever reach. In the end, this case leaves behind more questions than answers. It's been over 2 months now. 2 long months of searching, blaming, and fighting, but still, no trace of Lilly and Jack. No clear answers. No closure. This isn't just any missing child case. It's something else entirely. Something twisted. Because here, the family and the police can't even agree on basic facts. They don't trust each other. They don't work together. Every word from one side gets twisted by the other. And that's the real tragedy here. Some folks still believe Malaya hid the kids somewhere to protect them. That maybe, deep down, she was just a desperate mother trying to keep them safe from something worse. Others say those poor children are still out there, lost in the woods, waiting for someone, anyone, to find them. But here's the cold, hard truth. It's been over 60 days. 60 nights out there. And every day that passes, every fight, every rumor, every lie, just pushes those kids deeper into danger. The adults in this story, they're too busy pointing fingers, protecting themselves, chasing their own demons. And in doing so, they've forgotten the only thing that really matters: the children. This case teaches us one brutal lesson. When adults let their grudges, secrets, and pride take over, it's the innocent who suffer. And now, all we can do is hope that somehow, some way, Lilly and Jack are still out there, safe, waiting to be brought home. Pray for them. Pray hard. Because in a case like this, where everyone's lost in the dark, sometimes a prayer is all that's left.